So they would take one of our real postings, real job titles, real job descriptions, congratulate the person. It had our logo, company logo on it and everything, and it wasn't us. And people did their diligence, thank goodness. And they were reaching out to the regular recruiting address at the organization. And that brought to light that this was ongoing.
And just listen to yourself. Doesn't matter how exciting the job is, how badly you actually want that job. If you've been laid off, that changes the pressures. Listen to your gut. If something's telling you that it's off, then hold back, wait. All these scams that we're aware of, like the standard phishing scams, they rely on pace, on not giving you a chance to think.
Hello everyone, this is Kathleen Smith, Chief Outreach Officer here at ClearedJobs.Net, and I wanted to do a bonus episode to really talk about something that happens within our community, happens in the community in general, but we really want our listeners to be aware that there are scams that go on that are focusing on employment offers, employment engagement by a recruiter, that there might be some kind of recruiter outreach that you're not quite sure about. And I've invited my friend Kirsten Renner from Accenture Federal Services, and just to talk about a little bit of the employment scams that we've seen within our community, and some recommendations of what to be on the lookout for and how to go about making sure that you're not scammed in your next employment offer. We'll have our other dear friend Chris Rides on here, and it sounds like he's got some very interesting examples in the staffing and headhunter space. So, Kirsten, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself.
I am Kirsten Renner. I am running the National Security Portfolio Recruiting Team at Accenture Federal Services. I came over with the Nevada acquisition, where I was the director for 6 years, and supporting Accenture Federal Services in all of their mission-related staffing needs. So I'm also a volunteer throughout the community with the Car Hacking Village and with many of Kathleen's hiring villages throughout the B-Sides community and so forth. Once in a while, you see me on a panel or doing a talk in an effort to kind of help the community. So I'm very excited to talk about this subject because this is important, and with everything that we already have from a security concerns standpoint in life with, checking your email, are you getting scammed, are you getting phished? This is a sensitive topic, and it could affect each and every one of us. So thank you for bringing this to the table.
My pleasure. And I thought that employment scams had only been going on for a few years. And then I recall that some colleagues over 15 years ago worked with one of the largest defense contractors in our community. And they basically had to rearrange and take care of all of the email addresses and all of the social profiles of every single one of their recruiters, because they had actually been an agent, a state agent, had actually created email addresses and profiles that mimicked the entire company, and they didn't know about it until a job seeker sort of reached out to them and said, I think something is going on. So this has been going on for quite some time. We actually did do a survey on LinkedIn to ask our community about employment scams, and we came back with some interesting data. So we asked the community, have you or someone you know encountered an employment-related phishing scam within the cleared community? 43% said phony employment offers, 3% said fake termination letters, 21 said dubious phone solicitation, and about 31% said suspect social media outreach. We also did have some comments. One that I thought was particularly of interest was a job seeker commented, I've had a few amazing job opportunities contingent on obtaining a certification the recruiter directed me to that I needed to purchase. So with that as some kind of a background to our discussion, Kirsten, what are some of the scams you've heard about in the community?
First, I just wanted to highlight one of the items that you pulled into the survey because I feel like it's going to touch everybody. When they say that your offer is contingent on a certification, they're pulling out something that is real that happens in reality that is a normal thing that would happen, and they're twisting it around and saying you have to come up front with the cash, right? Like, so if you think about other types of scams that are financial in nature, if they're asking you to put money up front first, that should be like a flag for you. Typically, the employer should be the one taking on costs on your behalf for that sort of thing. So that leads me to an example. Now, there's going to be your everyday less nefarious scam type activity or questionable activity from, say, maybe a headhunter who's just trying to get their foot in the door, and they're taking job postings directly from the websites or the social postings from an actual employer, and they're posting it as if it were their own. They're representing it as if it were their own. That is, again, less nefarious, but still kind of a sneaky, unideal thing, and not going to typically be to your benefit, the candidate, when that occurs. So be careful that the postings that you're looking at are really attached to the employer that's offering the position. But back to the example that is the worst one I've seen, and it was fairly recently. It was right when the pandemic was starting, and there was a bad actor that was reaching out to candidates that were, posting their resumes and showing that they were available candidates, and they were saying, "Congratulations, here's your offer, and here's your reload package, and here is the actions you need to take in order to we're going to relocate you. That's going to be part of this agreement, is you're going to get this, this apartment or this housing. However, you had to take action and you had to front some money for like the apartment or the security deposit, and then you would get," and it was a very nice offer, and the offer had my company at the time's name attached to it. So they would take one of our real postings, real job titles, real job descriptions, congratulate the person. It had our logo, company logo on it and everything, and it wasn't us. And people did their diligence, thank goodness. And they were reaching out to the regular recruiting address at the organization, and that brought to light that this was ongoing. Law enforcement became involved, like it was a huge scam. So that's the worst one I've seen, and it was right in the middle of a pandemic when people are getting laid off, and people are excited that there were people that were putting money up for this to relocate and take these positions. So pretty scary stuff.
So it sounded like some of the job seekers within that community did some steps that their awareness was raised. Tell our listeners a little bit more about what are some of the checking that they should do, no matter what, if they get an email, if they get a social media outreach, what are like the one or two things that they need to do is sort of verify that this is really somebody that they should be talking to?
This bad actor did a pretty good job in masking, getting a URL that looked similar to the company URL. So in the same way that you will hover over an email address when you get a "hey, you won a prize" email, the same way that you're verifying that the actual sending address matches the company URL, makes sense. Also, go to the contact us part of the web address of the company and see what the formatting is. For most organizations have a standard format by which they do most of their email addresses. So does it match? Is it first, last name? Does the URL match? Things like that. Is it .net instead of .com? Like, what is going on? So just doing the due diligence. And thankfully, that is how this particular scam was noticed.
The more and more scams that come out, this makes job seekers all the more wary about talking with a recruiter. So, what are one or two things that if they are talking to a recruiter, what are some things that they should ask them on a phone interview that would sort of say, hey, this way I can sort of figure out if this person is truly a recruiter for this company or someone who's trying to scam me? So, what would be one or two questions they should ask?
Even before you get to that actual live phone call, if you do some due diligence and try to ascertain if they actually work there, And they may not. They may be a trusted partner with the organization. They may be a trusted vendor that actually does have a partnership. There's some really good headhunters that do have strong relationships with and represent the organization, and there's others that don't. And in my experience, it's been more often that is the case. So ask them while you're speaking to them when you get to that point. Are you a partner? Have you had a long relationship with the company? Are you only representing this company? Are you talking about this position for multiple organizations or just for one organization? So you're trying to figure out how is this person that is claiming to be the recruiter for the position actually representing you to obtain the position. So you can find out are they a partner? How long have they been a partner? And are they exclusively handling this position? So those are really important questions to figure out.
One thing that did come up in our survey was someone who did have a job with a government contractor or a job offer, and it was in the cleared space. And the job seeker specifically asked if this was rotational work, rotational shift work, which does happen a lot, or was it a very standard shift? And they were told that, there was no rotational work, and it did come up that way. Is that considered a scam, or is that considered a misunderstanding between the job seeker and the employer?
So keep in mind, a lot of the intake information is only as good coming in as it is going out. You have to verify things on your own, and that in that instance, it may not be bad action on the part of the representing recruiter. They may be relaying to you the best thing that they were told. So sometimes things will come across as a bait and switch when maybe the recruiter was told something that changed later. So do your due diligence, take your notes, like you said, track everything. When we were talking right before we started recording, you made an excellent point that I didn't want to lose, where you should be tracking all your applications. You're going to lose track. You're going to be like, did I actually apply for that one? Did I actually apply for that one? Because I'm seeing more and more people say that they're getting fake offers or fake pre-offers and even interview invitations. And if you didn't apply, that's a huge red flag. So definitely just keep a nifty spreadsheet that says whether or not for sure you applied and when, so you can make sure that that you're not being scammed in that way as well.
Awesome. So let's recap for everyone. If they apply for a job and then they talk to a recruiter and then they get to the interview stage, what are some of the normal processes that happen so that people know what normal is so that when they do get something that's abnormal, they'll know to contact someone?
My expertise is being an in-house recruiter, so know that that's the perspective that I'm describing normal as. I am assuming there probably will be some extra layers if you are using an outside recruiter. There's going to be at least one or two extra phone calls in that regard, because you start screening with them before you go on to your next screen. Typically, there is the screening call, an intake call, I like to call it. It should be an intake more than a screen. This is where your information is being compiled by the recruiter so that they can represent you, so that they can build a profile for you, that they will then establish a mutual agreement with you, the candidate, that you want your information to be shared with hiring managers, and you can and you should ask in that moment, who will they be sharing it with, so that you can ensure that you're being considered across the right number of things and opportunities and types of opportunities, and that they're representing what you're looking for, your preferences and your requirements and so forth. At that stage, you should be submitted. Then you're being reviewed as to will you go take the next step. The next step is talking to a hiring team. That may or may not include an in-person interview. Nowadays, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's a video instead. I have noticed that there's often less interviews now, post-COVID. And then from there, the next stage should be, after interview, an offer or a pre-offer that explains here are the options and here's what the layouts are for those things. Pretty standard stuff.
Kirsten, thank you so much for your talking points today and sort of bringing awareness to our community.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Welcome back. I've invited my dear friend, Chris Rides, to come and talk with us. Chris, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about what you do in the community?
Yeah, sure. So I've been in tech recruitment for coming up 25 years now. It's been some time. I definitely didn't have grey hair, and I have a lot now. So a lot of things have changed. Yep. Over that type of time. For the last 10 years, 10 years ago, I started Tyro Security, which is cybersecurity staffing and professional services firm. I'm now president of the Americas for Via Resource, which is a cybersecurity staffing company. It's a global one, so we've merged actually the Tyro Security staffing side into that. So I'm super excited. This is my first interview or anything I've done publicly with that new title. So really excited. Specialized in cybersecurity, been involved in the community for a long time. So founded Cloud Security Alliance chapter, spoken at RSA, B-Sides, DEF CON, as you well know, ISC Squared Security Congress, and known Kathleen for, oh my goodness, I don't know, many years now, and it's been a wonderful relationship.
I figured it out. We've known each other going on 8 years.
Wow.
So we did a survey of candidates and sort of asked them, have you been involved or encountered an employment-related phishing scam? In the cleared community that I work, I have known of bad actors who've actually gone in and mimicked an entire defense contractor's recruiting team's LinkedIn profiles.
Wow.
So there are wide scale scams out there, but you have a few examples that you wanted to share with us, and I'm glad you have these examples because I want people to understand that they can work with recruiters, that there are great recruiters out there, but also knowledge is power. So being able to know what the kind of scams are out there. So tell us about some of the scams that you've heard about or seen.
Yeah, certainly. Well, I'll tell you what, I'll start off with something that I've found quite interesting and never really put it together with a scam, but as a owner of a company, and lucky enough, we're a small company, right? So I can notice these things as they change. But I suddenly noticed that we had a new employee on LinkedIn that was working for us. And bearing in mind that we're a recruitment company, I got onto that pretty quickly, started messaging LinkedIn, which actually is really hard to get people taken off your company profile. But quite honestly, after talking to you and talking to some job seekers and candidates that are out there about some of the scams out there, I wondered whether this was somebody trying to use our branding to perhaps action some of those. So it's quite scary in terms of trying to spot them. We're talking about an established company, hopefully with a very good brand, and people trying to jump on those to do that. And I know certainly there are people that are doing it in very big companies where they can completely get away with it. So yeah, it's interesting. In terms of what I've seen, I think certainly there's a lot of information harvesting. I think job seekers generally, you need to trust your gut, and especially in our cybersecurity GRC world, I think our guts are more in tune than anybody else for these scams and these risks. And just listen to yourself. Doesn't matter how exciting the job is, how badly you actually want that job. If you've been laid off, that changes the pressures. Listen to your gut. Something's telling you that it's off, then hold back, wait. All these scams that we're aware of, like the standard phishing scams, they rely on pace, on not giving you a chance to think. And I think that's the same with a lot of these information harvesting. And so I just say, be really careful about the information you give. In other countries, it seems more typical for people to ask for information that we just wouldn't ask for here, like last 4 digits of your social security number, things like that. Very strange. We have people come to us from external recruitment companies who send us candidates, probably thinking that we're an end client, and they put their resume in, they put all of their contact details, and they put the last 4 of their SSN in that email, which they don't need to, but it's always typically an international recruiter. So I think that might be just something that isn't necessarily a scam, but it's something that they're trained to do in their country. And when they port it over, that's what happens. I would just say, you don't need to give that. As a job seeker, once you've got a job and you feel comfortable that it's a real job, then you'll go through background checks and you'll do all of that sort of stuff. But you trust your gut on that. You don't need to do this stuff up front. And if it's ever moving too quickly, take a hold back. You're not going to lose a job for being suspicious. Certainly not a cybersecurity or GRC job. for being
Hmm.
careful. You're not going to lose that opportunity. So don't let anybody that makes you feel like you are, just be a bit careful of that.
I think that's really great advice because, as you said, anytime that someone is trying to trick you, they're going to move with a certain urgency. They're going to move with a certain amount of, call me back, call me back. And as we know, recruiters can be a little pushy,
Right.
but at the same time, if it's someone who is really wanting to establish a relationship with you, they're going to take the time to engage with you. They're going to take the time to answer your questions. And as we've seen so many examples of people saying, give me all your information now. I need to get you the offer letter right away. And I think that, as you said, trust your gut. What else do you have for us?
In terms of, I think popular scams I've heard about and spoken to candidates where they've been tried. I think they're probably candidates that may have been falling through it, but they're not going to admit that to anybody, right? Are the job offers that seem too good to be true. They come very quickly without much hard work. And I know that even now with all these layoffs, people are still in high demand, especially in engineering roles. And I'm sure certainly in the cleared field as well. There's still very high demand. And people come with these job offers that are just too good to be true. There are no real strong interview processes. In some cases, the interviews are done over Telegram or some sort of platform rather than actually face to face. If you feel like that's moving too quickly, be very careful. And typically, what that's led to, in terms of what I've heard, is things like, oh, we want to get you started Monday, but we're not going to be able to get the laptop to you in time. Can you purchase it yourself? Here is a link. This is what we want you to purchase, or anything like that, or software, or anything. And often, most of the time that works because they send you off to a site that they control, and they then have credit card details, other information that they need to be able to then sort of make use of a fraud type scam there. So yeah, again, just be very careful if it doesn't feel right. There are roles that move quickly, but you'll typically have, you're always going to have some sort of interview that's either over video, certainly over the phone, and typically nowadays always a video one as well. So I would always recommend you do that, and just keep an eye out. Anything that doesn't feel right probably isn't right.
So, if you think someone's reaching out to you that is, suspicious, what are your recommendations of steps to verify that they're truly working for a company?
So I think, of course, you're going to probably go onto LinkedIn. They might even connect you via LinkedIn. Anybody that's in recruitment but doesn't have a LinkedIn account is highly suspicious. It's very, very hard to do your job nowadays without a LinkedIn account. I don't think I know anybody that's a recruiter that doesn't have one. And I understand that that might be slightly different in terms of cleared. I'm sure the recruiters still have them, but maybe candidates may not so much. But I would utilize that first of all to see what information you've got on there. You can look at their activity. How active are they? Most recruiters are going to be very active. How many connections have they got? Who are those connections? And then even once you've done that, then you can look at the company they work for. And if they work for a large company, reach out to one of the other recruiters there or one of the managers there and say, do you know this person? The best thing I can say is if you're going to reach out to them via LinkedIn, look for the people that are most active, and you can see people's activity on LinkedIn, and the people that are most active are much more likely to respond to your messages quicker. You want somebody that's active on there because they're more likely to respond, and just say, hey, I've had somebody reach out. I want to do my due diligence because I feel like it might be a scam and they're saying that they work for you. Do you know this person? And I have had, it's not been on the job seeker side, but certainly as a company, I've felt things are not quite right, and I've reached out to people. I've even called up the general headquarter phone number and asked for that person, and asked if they're on there. And if they're not on their list of people, as much as they might not put you through nowadays, but if they're not on that list of people, that probably makes sure that your gut's telling you something even more important, right? So those are a couple of things you absolutely can do.
Yeah, I think that, this also goes back to something that you and I have talked about on numerous career panels is have your network of recruiters. No matter what industry you're in, what community you're in, you should always have 3 to 5 recruiters that you have established relationships with. Not just, hey, I just got laid off and I want to make Chris Rides my new best friend, but somebody that you've interviewed with before. You may not have gotten a job with them, but you had a really good rapport, keeping in touch with them throughout your career. Like, hey, I just got my CISSP, or hey, I just, got another promotion, just wanted to check in with you. That goes such a long way when you're in any kind of job search, because you then have a group of people who are trained recruiters who have your back, who can look at your resume, can vet any of these, fishy things that might be going on. So, one thing I want people to walk away from today's episode is really understand it is your responsibility to make sure you have a really good toolkit, which includes your resume, but it also includes having a really great network of recruiters. Chris, thank you so much for your time today. It's always great seeing you. Look forward to seeing you in Las Vegas and Nashville this year with ISC
Yeah,
Squared.
can't wait. Thanks, Kathleen.
Take care. This is Kathleen, and I'm glad that I was able to bring together some people to have a conversation about employment scams, because they have been happening in our community for decades. And there are bad actors and there are bad recruiting firms out there that do try to get job seekers to share their personal information, to get them to pay for certifications ahead of time, to get them wrapped up into a relationship where they think they're going to get a really great job with a government contractor. But as we've talked with both our guests, Chris and Kirsten, always be diligent on your research. Does the recruiter really work for that firm? What are the kind of questions they're asking? If they raise your awareness or raise your sort of hackles, let's do some research and make sure that you know that that recruiter works for that company or has a relationship to reach out to you on a recruiting behalf. And always be sure that you're asking enough questions to feel comfortable with that recruiter to go to the next stage.